Hi everyone, I'm Jodi Barrows, and today I have a special guest with me, Kay Roberts from the Nashville, Tennessee area. Kay and I have been friends for a long time, and she has a really wonderful new binding tool that will give you that flange and the binding all at once. But before we get into showing you the binding tool, I want to tell you a little bit about Kay. She's been a good friend for over 20 years. She actually was my very first stalker that I had back over 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Square. And she has been a home ec teacher. She's had a drapery workshop. She's had a quilt shop for over 20 years. And she is all about saving time and making things easy just like I am. So those of you that know me know that I'm not really a gadget person. I only like things that really do give me speed and give me accuracy. And if they do that, then I'm all about that. So we're going to get started here with, Kay wants to tell something about herself, and then we're going to go over the binding tool. And then we actually have a quilt, a real quilt, a good size that we're going to work with so that you can see everything from start to finish. So Kay, did I leave anything out about all of the attributes that you have?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty well covers it. Yes, I was her first stalker, so, you know, if you stalk them long enough, you can stay with them.
They become your best
They
friends.
become your best friend, yes. But she's brought me, if it wasn't for Jodi, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wanted to find my niche in the quilting world about 20 years ago, and when I met Jodi, I knew the square and square technique was it. And that's where I started at. I was learning the square and square and became a certified teacher with that. And from that, with Jodi's pushing and giving us the encouragement, I went on. I have a business partner, Kathy Carilla, and we opened our quilt shop 16 years ago. We started that. And we progressed from a small little room up to a 4,000 square foot. And just this past fall, we retired from the shop. We sold it to one of our employees, so it's still continuing there in Franklin, Tennessee, called the Quilting Squares of Franklin. But I learned a lot through that. Owning a shop, you learn things, you have to get things done quickly, but I want it to be precise. And bindings was always a problem for us. We could never get them done fast enough. So I had heard about this technique, and I thought, okay, necessity is going to make me do this. So I started, and I kind of designed my tool. I just took a piece of cardboard, basically wrote on there what I needed, and I handed it to my husband, and I said, find me a plastics guy and a graphics. And so from there, we've had it since 2013, and all of my quilts are done like this. And what makes it easy is it's all machine stitched down, and there's no, it's machine stitched down, so there's no hand stitching. You know, my hands are getting to the point where I can't do that anymore. I was able to do a whole quilt in one night. I can't do that. So I like the machine stitching. With this flange, you really can't even tell that this is machine stitched down until you get your nose right on it. So with my tool, I created it to do more than one thing.
We like that. We like rulers that do a lot.
Do
not
a lot.
Just one
and
thing.
I learned from the best. We put it all in one. So I have two measurements here, a 1 3/4 inch measurement here and a 1 3/8. The 1 3/4 is what I will be cutting my flange, and that's this yellow part that we have here. That's the flange. The flange is cut the widest. The binding is cut the 1 3/8. Then what we do is once those are cut, and you can use this ruler to cut those two. So you don't have to have another ruler because those are kind of odd measurements, the 1 3/8 is. So you cut those two, you sew them together, and once you sew them together, then this is what you have.
Oh, I really like that. So when you were talking, something that was kind of different was that you see the flange is the smallest piece, but that's your widest
The widest measurement.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that an eighth of an inch, whether it's 3/8 or 1/8 or whatever, can be a little tricky to cut. And I like it that you don't have any other lines.
Right.
Like you're using a regular ruler, you have all these other lines. And so here, we can cut that eighth really easy because there's no other line.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that helps me do the binding and flange. Also, it helps me to put my two tails together. And a lot of people have problems with that. It's either too bulky, they can't get it right, and they keep tearing it out.
Or it gets twisted.
It gets
or
twisted.
They get the angles cut the wrong way.
Right.
And you know, in a lot of the quilt shows that I've judged in, that seems to be the thing that really knocks a quilt out, is it could be pieced beautifully, quilted beautifully, but you get ready to do the binding and you don't know how to do a corner, you don't know how to do the finishing, or even square the quilt up so that it's nice
And flat,
professional.
And yes. So I've done that. And then the other thing is I've created, and I don't have a sample with me, I forgot it, but it's a two-sided binding. So your quilt, if you wanted a double-sided quilt, one side of your binding would be one color, and the other side is a different color.
Well, that's another video.
So another video, another time.
We'll do that.
So, and then the fourth thing, saves you time. We know we have to save our time.
So we want speed, we want accuracy, we want our stuff to look professional.
Yep.
It's great to start a quilt, but it's exciting to finish it, because when you finish it, then you feel good about jumping in and starting another one.
That's right. We have to get these quilts done. So when I start out, you know, I've used my ruler to cut the two pieces. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to sew it to the back of my quilt, the back. You know, normally it's to the front. So what I'm doing is kind of totally different. So forget about doing your regular binding. So we're going to take this and sew it to the back of our quilt. I like to use kind of what I call a fat 1/4 inch because I want a full binding.
Right.
That's what we see in a lot of quilt shows too, is that binding, you have a little space in there. And we want it nice and full.
So I think it's important and good. Let's go ahead and kind of start and repeat this about having a fat 1/4 inch, because that you want a healthy amount in here.
Right.
So when this pulls over, that there's no extra, like loose skin coming off of the edge. You want it to be firm and good all the way through there. Because I notice when I judge quilts, you do have that. Lots of times you can go to the edge of the quilt and you can feel where there's no quilt in there. It's just binding on the two sides.
You're right.
Okay.
Right. So that's very important, is to that. And then the other one is putting your corners, doing your corners, because that's can get tricky.
It's not hard.
It's
but
not
if you
hard.
don't know what you're doing, it doesn't come together.
It doesn't
nicely.
come together.
It
And
doesn't
you
look
have
neat.
to do the back correctly in order for when you turn it around to the front to have a nice miter on the front.
Front and back.
Right. So what we've done is we're stitching. I'm stitching along here and I'm coming up to this corner. Well, normally a lot of people will say, well, measure 1/4 inch. Well, if I have a fat 1/4, I want the same measurement here as I do here.
Exactly.
So instead of measuring that with a ruler, because it's usually not there, I will just take my binding, fold it up at a 45-degree angle to that corner.
And even if you don't know anything about angles, or a 45-degree angle scares you, you can tell by the way it looks. It's going from corner to corner, and everything is nice and smooth and neat.
Right.
Yeah. So even
Right.
if you don't know anything
No,
about
even-
angles.
That's true. So you've creased that. Now if you wanted to, you can come back. If you can't see that, you know, take a pencil so you know exactly. Then when you stitch it, you're going to stitch right up to that line.
And because of your seam allowance here and your angle here, you know exactly where to stop.
Stop.
And you don't have to pin anything and,
Nope.
and no standing on your head and all
And
of that.
doing all of
It's
that.
just neat.
You're just going to stop. I take a couple back stitches. Then if I was in the machine, then it would be pivoted. Then I'll take my binding, fold it up, and it's right there. And then I'm going to fold it down again. And then you want to make sure that all of these folds are straight. You don't want this fold out beyond your quilt. You want it even with your quilt.
Because that's a measurement.
Right. If you take it beyond, then it's going to be too bulky on the other side. You want it even with this side, and then you want these two little fold lines even too. So if you need to, you can always take a pin, or I love my binding clips, my little clippets, and I can clip that. I want to make sure that stays in there. And what I do is I come in about 3 stitches. I'll start here. Then I back out just to the edge.
Now,
And
normally
then come
we don't
forward.
do a lot of back stitching in a
Nope.
quilt, but I do think here in the binding, it's important to do that 1 or 2 back when you're on this side, and the 1 or 2 back on that way. And to me, when I do my binding, what that helps to do is not only give it strength and durability, but when I turn it over, it makes it all nice and neat and flush.
Right.
And that professional look that you want.
And those seams are popping and
I was going to say,
coming
and
out.
they kind of move a little
Right.
bit.
Right.
Kind of like it gives you a little bit of leeway to go one way or the other.
Right. So you're just going to stitch that binding on. Then once that binding is stitched, then I'm going to pick up my next sample here. And so I've done all my corners. And you can see that they are laying nice and square. Everything is square. So I've left a space here about 10 to 12 inches, whatever. It doesn't make any difference.
Too tight, you don't have enough room to work.
Right. You want a big enough space. So I will take the right side, fold it down, and flip a tail back 3 or 4 inches. If you have stuff left, get rid of it. Same thing with the left side. Flip him back. Now, you can see right here, I've left a little space. That's about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, or less.
1/8 of an inch?
About 1/8 of an inch. I call it a smidge. And, you know, to write that into a pattern is not easy.
Yeah.
So I'd say about 1/8 of an inch. And sometimes that depends on if you're cutting your binding on the bias or on the straight. If you're cutting on the straight, you may even want to bring it in just a little bit more. But you have to leave a space.
If you cut it on the straight, you want it closer together.
Right.
If it's cut with a bias,
Bias, then
you
about
can go-
1/8. And, you know, but you have to leave a space. And I'll tell you why we have to leave that space, because everybody's going, well, I don't leave a space. I don't get it. So then you're going to place a crease line on those 2 fold lines right there. Once you do that, then you're going to open up this right side. And then I'll mark this crease line. You can mark that crease line. Now I'm using a pencil, but don't usually necessarily use a pencil. Use a marker that will come out. Now I'm going to take my ruler. See, I have a crease line here. And one says top right, and the other one says bottom left.
Okay.
So this is my right side. So when I look at my ruler, it says top right crease line. I'm going to place that crease line on that crease line that we did from folding it back. This says top right, so it goes to the top of my binding unit. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to draw a line right here at the end. I would pick up a pair of scissors and I would cut along that line.
Right on the line.
Right on the line. Cut on that line.
So you don't have to worry about a seam allowance or
Nope,
any of that.
it's
Cut
all
right
incorporated.
there.
So now you're going to take your left side. Going to do the same thing. Right here is that crease line.
And I want everybody to notice how that it was like this, and you just open it up. Don't twist it or
Nope.
anything. Just let it lay.
Lay flat.
And same way on the other side.
Right, right. So there's my crease line. So now I pick up my ruler. It was in my right hand because it said top right. Now I turn it and put it in my left hand. Now it says bottom left.
Okay.
So if you know your right from your left,
Then you
you're
got it.
Going to place that on that crease line again. And again, see, we're at the bottom of our binding unit.
Yeah.
This time it's on that binding. Then you're going to take a pencil or a marker and you're going to mark that. Just like that. Okay? Again, I'm going to cut that.
Okay. Right on the line.
On the line. Once you have that cut, then see, I'm just kind of open these back up like this.
And that's what they look like.
And this is
And you
what
have
they
them
look
cut.
like after they're cut.
And your angles are going the correct direction.
Right, right. Same thing. Now, I have put a 1/4 inch here at the bottom. So when I do this, I like to take my ruler and mark that 1/4 inch from my edge. So when I get ready to put these together, then I have a line. Find a couple pins. Now, this is where you're going to have to just kind of pinch.
Just bring it together.
Just bring them together. No twisting.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a pin right here at that seam.
At the X.
That X. And match that up with this one over here. Match those two seams up. Because normally you're not matching up two seams.
Right.
We want these two seams to match the best we can.
Because we want that flange to look smooth.
Smooth.
So that color is going along the edge.
Now, ladies, close enough is good enough, okay? That's kind of my motto. If it's not perfect,
it's okay.
it's okay.
It's handmade.
It's handmade and it's yours.
Now, we also didn't talk about that when you have the four sides of your quilt, is there a certain top, bottom, or side that you like to start on?
I usually always start on the bottom.
Yeah.
Because that gives me, it's going to look nice at the top.
Yeah. Well, and I think it kind of depends on what you're doing with your quilt, too.
Right.
Like, a lot of our quilts go in a book or they hang. And so you're going to see the top part of the quilt and the bottom is not.
Right.
And if it's for your bed, then it would be at the bottom. And maybe you have a footboard or you have a little bench at the end of your bed. And so, therefore, if it doesn't look quite exactly the way you want to.
And I'll show you an example of that too. So once you get these together, then you can either do a basting on your machine. You can crank up that stitch length and do a basting so you can go back and check it, or just stitch it. I usually just stitch it.
Yeah, I was going to say just stitch it.
Just stitch it and get it done.
Yeah.
So once that is done, it's like this.
Look how smooth.
And then I come back and I press those seams open.
Now, it's important to press them open because when you come back in here and lay it down, it helps move that fabric into different places instead of all of it being right on top.
Right on top.
And it having a thick, bunchy area there.
Right. And
that's look nice and it doesn't sew.
That's right. That's why this is at an angle when we put the two tails together. You can see right here is where I put those. I'm off maybe a thread.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So now you're ready to stitch that to the back of your quilt. Remember that space we left? Your binding's going to stretch on you. So you want enough left that space in there for this to stretch out so you don't get any pleats or puckers. Now the first...
And I love how it just pops down on there just perfectly.
Perfectly. It just pops and you're just going to start here and you're going to finish stitching it.
Very nice.
Once that's done, then you're ready to take that binding, pull it up over here to the front. So you've got this seam here and you want that seam just below where you stitch that on at.
So all the measurements on the ruler and the way that we have been teaching to do it, this seam right here is going to go exactly down over that.
Right.
And that's the professional, stitch it on with a machine and nothing shows.
Right.
Cool.
Right. And it gets done. I like to use, again, my little clips to hold these, because if you put that clip on there, you can kind of see where it's at here. And then see on the back, if you pulled that over too tight. A lot of people wants to pull that over way too tight.
Yes.
And if you put that clip on there, you can see that your back, your bobbin thread is going to be way down here. And you want it close to this ditch, but it's never going to be in that ditch.
Right, in it. Yeah.
Don't even go there.
Don't try.
Don't even try.
It's okay.
It's okay. And you use matching threads. I'd use yellow thread in my top. And I'd use blue thread in my bobbin. So once it's done, Now, your corners.
Okay, let's look at
Once we're going to look at corners. So now I'm stitching this. I'm stitching along here, and I come to this corner.
Now, do you like to use a walking foot when you're
Yes,
doing this?
I do a walking foot.
I think that's
Anytime you
important,
put a binding on, you need a walking foot.
And the reason why is because you have multiple layers of fabric, and the binding foot helps to move all of those layers through the machine at the same time.
Right.
When you're working, especially with a bulk area.
Right. And I have a FAF, and it has a built-in walking foot. So I always forget that point.
Yeah. And a lot of the
I'm
newer
just used
machines
to it.
do have a
It
built-in
has that
one.
dual feed, yes.
But if you don't have a walking foot and you want to do bindings or you do any machine quilting, I think it's really important to make the investment to get the walking foot that goes with your machine. And an older machine that I had has an easy attachment to go to it. in. My new one has it built right in.
Yeah.
It might be a good excuse for you to go ahead and buy that new machine you're wanting.
That's right. That's right. So we're stitching along here. I'm coming to my corner. So I will stop about 3 inches out. So I'd stop probably about there. And I'm going to pull this, the opposite side I'm sewing on. I'm going to pull it over. Okay?
Yep.
Take a clip. You can clip that. Then, a stiletto. If you don't have a stiletto,
order it from us.
Order it from Jodi. She has these really cool stilettos. It's flat. They're not going to roll anywhere. I love my stiletto.
Another use for it.
Another use for it. So now what I do is I take my stiletto, I pull that straight up just like that at that end of my quilt. Then I pull this straight down.
And you got that nice angle.
And you have a nice angle.
Wow. That's really cool. I love it.
Just right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if someone is new to the flange and new to binding, they probably don't realize that you have to put the flange, if you do it other ways.
The old method,
you
yes.
have to put the flange on all by itself, then go in and do your binding and hope that you can get this all nice and neat and even. So that's another cool thing about having it all built into the binding at the same time with the ruler is that it just does it all at once. It's all
done at once.
So
and you don't have to hand stitch it.
One step, but you have 2 benefits.
Right. So you're just going to come up here, needle down, pivot, and then come on down.
And some people are really new to quilting and everything in general. So anytime you do that, when you turn a corner, you make sure that needle is down. Then you can just lift the foot and move your fabric, and you don't lose your spot on your machine. So that's an important part too, especially for beginners or newbies.
Right, right. So once that's all done, then this is your finished product. And, you know, you can't really even tell. I used a yellow thread.
I have to really think about it and really focus my eye to try to even find
where that's at.
Oh, there it is.
And then your back is the
look how neat that is.
Turquoise, and I did a pretty good job on here.
Yeah.
There's might be a couple places. See here, I came out just a tad. But you get close, and if you get up on your binding a bit, you just come back off.
Just move back a little bit.
Just move back.
Now, I think something else. Do you ever find, is this the last one you worked with?
Yes.
Do you ever find that when you're in here stitching this top side over, do you also use your stiletto as you're stitching to hold it down and bring it over?
Bring it over.
Because what I love about a stiletto is that it can move the fabric a thread or two that your fingers can't.
Yes.
It also can get right in close to the needle and your foot that your fingers shouldn't do.
Right.
And even when I would do a binding the old traditional way on the machine, I always used my stiletto to try to help eliminate a lot of this that you're eliminating with your system of the binding.
Right, right. So, you know, it's just saved me a lot of time. And it's just made my life so much easier.
Well, we always say we want fast, we want fun, we want fabulous, and we want finished. And this is really a nice, professional, finished touch to your quilts. And like I say so many times in my judging, it's the binding that really separates the quilts of who wins and who doesn't. And I know the binding really scares a lot of people. So this was kind of a quick overview of how to do the binding tool and to do this nice flange color. And on there, sometimes you need just a little spark of color in the outside edge of your quilt. And there's no way you could sew a strip in tiny like that and get that pop of color.
No.
So now we're actually going to bring out a big quilt that we need to trim the edges. We need to square it up. We need to start with our binding from the finish. So we're actually going to work with a real project in the next section of the video. So I hope you've really enjoyed this and learned a lot. Stick with us and watch the next step if you want some more.
Thank you.